Oh no, it's fizzing. And we're back for episode 3 of the Casting Couch, Form Check Friday. And if you guys watched the other day's vlog, you know that I replaced Miana for Valentine's Day with Ty. So might as well replace her with Ty for Form Check Friday as well. And if you guys don't know what the Form Check Friday is here, going into Team Activated to take a look at a thread I posted for people to submit their videos for me to review on this video for you guys watching on your video viewing device. And Ty is in the team, been there for a couple months.
Yeah, yep.
He's also awkward on camera, so this might be painful. Might have to edit a bunch, but we'll make it work.
Need to make a lecture in there on how to talk to a camera.
I was telling him like he was just FaceTiming his kid, and I was just like, just pretend it's Emmett behind the camera, and it's gonna be perfect. So
I'll do my best.
We'll roll, but you're getting enough out of the team?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's
loving it.
We're going to get a couple word answers, but some people are hesitant because it is group coaching, but I think that is what makes it tremendously valuable, because not only are you getting feedback, you're getting to see the feedback that I'm giving other people every single day, and that is going to expedite your learning process as both a lifter and a coach. We're taking a look at it.
Yeah, buddy.
Brandon Winter is saying that, I need to clarify. We haven't watched any of these videos yet, so we're going in blind, have no idea what we're looking at. So it should be fun. And I think what will make this more fun, actually, knowing who submitted last. I didn't watch the video yet. I guess I already watched the video because I saw the squats in person and I saw it when I edited the video that she posted. But Miana submitted her squat. So I figure we should take a look at that. And it might be a little bit silly. Oh no. This is a disaster. The Wi-Fi in this Airbnb is horrendous. I'm going to try to watch on YouTube. Is it going to work? It's working on YouTube. Okay. I think how we're going to play this is I want Ty to watch the video and just tell me if you see anything weird or anything you don't like.
Miana in general?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Little jealousy going on, I see. What are you thinking?
I feel like when a kid's called on in class.
Good. Flashbacks to high school.
Yeah. I think it almost looks like hips shooting back and up a little bit.
Yep, absolutely.
Looks almost like you can see as she comes down, it arches a little bit more.
Yep.
And the hips come up a bit.
Yeah. And what do you think we want to do about that?
Hold that brace a little bit tighter.
Absolutely. And I think part of it too, as you hear Cole opening rice cakes in the background, I don't know if you can hear that on the audio, but he's back there eating because his show's tomorrow. That's why we're down here. But like Ty was saying, we can kind of see getting a little bit archier in the bottom. And what that usually means to me is, number one, it is going to be like an issue of getting a little bit more anterior tension. And that's something we're working on a ton with her. And part of that cueing is like we were trying to just like cue ribs down, cue ribs down, cue ribs down. But what's actually made this look better, because this is looking a lot better as of late than it was a couple months ago when she was just getting back into barbell work. She took a little bit of a longer break after meet. It's been a little bit weird getting back. But what I've been cueing her recently is almost trying to like shove the back of her belt between her elbows. So she's like pushing the belt backwards as she's driving the elbow forwards. And that is helping and going the right direction. But we're also cranking on the ab work hard, especially the band loaded stuff, to kind of get her stronger as the hips become closer to the torso. And like the band loading on abs, I find is really, really, really gnarly for that, because whoopsie daisies, accidentally went to Angus Bradley. How do I go back?
Well, okay. You're on YouTube. Okay.
Yeah, got her. But what I was saying is, the thing about the band work is that you guys should watch English Bradley, by the way, he's hilarious. Anyways, the band work really carries over well to the bottom position on squats and deadlifts or brace, because with a band, it gets harder as you go further up, and the leverage gets gnarlier as you go further up as well. So it gets really, really, really good for holding shit together in that bottom. So basically, Miana needs to get stronger abs. But then the other half of it too is leverage-wise. If we're thinking about what's happening at the pelvis as she's getting more relatively anterior tilted, and again, I'm not the guy that's going to be like, anterior tilt is scary, you're going to die if you anteriorly tilt. But what I am going to say is that if we are anteriorly tilting the pelvis, that's going to mean there's more relative hip flexion in the bottom. And if we're thinking about what gains leverage with more relative hip flexion, blank stare from Ty.
Yeah, sorry, I just zoned out watching your video for half a second.
So what gains leverage with more relative hip flexion in comparison to the other things that are going to move hip extension? He's blanking.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so as we get like more hip flexion, like relative deeper femur towards pelvis, it's going to mean that the adductor magnus is gaining leverage over the glutes. So this kind of means that we just want to crank on harder glute work. And again, that's something Manan has been prioritizing over the last like 3-4 years. And when we're dealing with someone that is very strong, like seeing that strength change to then start letting her use the relatively weaker glutes compared to the adductor magnus, it's going to take time. And like all I care about that it's going in the right direction. It has been going in the right direction, so ain't too worried. Now we're going over to Aaron, who, if you remember, I yelled at him a little bit last week for going a little bit off program and taking something he maybe shouldn't have. And we're going to have to watch on YouTube again. But checking out his 515, which is what he pulled last week. So I know he's working with a different coach. He's in here just getting extra feedback. So I don't want to, be stepping on too many toes, but I'd be curious on the programming if he is hitting singles every week on the same lift. But this definitely does look cleaner than his last week. What are you seeing on here, Ty?
Excuse me. I think as he comes up, it's kind of ramping up the legs a little bit.
Yep. And if you listened to me on here before, what does that mean?
You need to flex quads a little bit more.
A little bit. That's part of it with the knee bend, because like the quads have to go a little bit slack to let the knees come forward.
Yeah.
But again, leverage-wise or mechanics-wise, if we're thinking about it, what that usually means is that as a guy is going, around that mid-range is when the hamstrings gain a little bit of leverage and they have to work really freaking hard. If the hamstrings aren't strong enough to then support the hip hinge demand, bending the knees is going to make that leverage a little bit easier. It's going to let the hamstrings get shorter without actually having to contract against the weight. So a lot of times that little bit of ramp is reflective of weak hams. I know I've been yelling at him to get some more hams in there, and he has been clearly doing it because this does look cleaner than the last 2 pulls I've seen from him. He's only been here for 3 weeks, so this definitely is, again, going in the right direction. And knowing that we are doing the multiple singles at the 515, I think, again, like, I'm okay with how, like, that third one's looking. And going to his down sets, like, you see the down sets, this is where you can see the real progress being made, because with the pause, he's really driving through. So again, like, this is going the right direction for me. And all I'm going to say is keep on that freaking hamstring work, because it is doing what we need it to do for him. And we're taking a look at Joe's now and getting involved with some of today's squats. Feels absolutely slack as a pigeon in the hole, so he might bring back some pauses. So curious to see what the whole slackness looks like. Taking a look here. Oh, I don't know. I got an idea. What do you think, Ty?
Well, kind of similar to Miana there. It almost looks like he needs to
He's arching a little
raise
bit.
a little, arch a little, try to keep the abs down a little more. And
I think this is different than Miana because he's not losing it on the eccentric, which tells us that his glutes are still there to support it, but he's losing it a little bit on the concentric. And what I'm looking at is his head position. You kind of see it's ever so subtle. You can't really see it because he's behind the plates. But looking at that nose is as that lumbar spine's arching, his nose is flicking up. So I think it is more of like a global brace issue. I think the big thing that I'd want to focus on to improve that degree of tension is I'd want to try to find a harder head pack through the walkout, because you see in like his head slack, he's still not really setting it up at the top. Like he's getting a little bit, but I still think that like at the angle, because we can see his nose poking out, he probably could pull back a little bit harder, get a little bit harder pack. And the reason that I like the head pack strategy for improving a brace is that the whole spine, like it's kind of like one of those stupid like snake toys, like, you wiggle the snake and the whole snake moves. I'll put one on the screen so you guys know what I'm talking about. But if we are kind of loosey-goosey up here, it's going to be hard to create as much tension as possible down here. And the reason the neck pack is so valuable is that when we pack our neck and pull back, we're getting cervical extension through the lower cervical segments, but then our C1CO is going to be going into a little bit of flexion. So that means we're going to have co-contraction between the front side of the neck and the back side of the neck. And when we're doing that, we're pulling the head back against the rib cage. So it's going to give us something harder to anchor against with the abs. So pulling the head back is going to get the neck involved in the brace, is going to make a much, much, much tighter brace overall. So I think that like what I'd be trying to do is I try to find that head pack before he unracks, keep it through the entire walkout, and then not let go of it as he breathes. And I guarantee his brace is going to feel way freaking better. And we should probably look at his second video as well, since he did post it. It's a front angle, so we'll be able to get a better idea. Same thing, you can see the head forward, but this is going to be kind of the real tell is where it ends up. And you got to see still that little bit roundy through upper T-spine. And you got to see, again, you better see the head flick, matching that lumbar extension. Like he's just letting her come that little bit. And I think that's probably why we're letting go brace a hair in the bottom. So I think cleaning that up is going to be huge for him. And I think the other thing I might want to consider if he does feel like he can't pull the head back anymore, he can't get that upper T-spine a little bit taller, is I just want to work on some thoracic extension work, which could be as simple as squeaking in some pullovers a couple times a week to get access to that range. Now, moving on, checking out Pia, and she thinks I saw this one already. I think I probably already commented on it, but she wants to make sure her lower back wasn't rounding here as well. Not used to having to click to the view on YouTube. But she's running pause deads, 405 double. And she's coming off of a pretty nasty like glute, hip, low back, SIJ bullshit tweak. So I'm really stoked that she's back to pulling over 4 this quick, because it laid her out, you know, I think it was 2 weeks ago. And this is her first month in here, so I'm not super familiar with her lifting yet. But what I asked her when I first saw this pull, I guess, Ty, what are you thinking first?
I'm just watching.
Blank stares.
I'm just sorry, just trying to focus.
I just gotta fill the space with voice so we don't have to cut.
Yeah, sorry, I'm slow.
It's all good, dude.
Stressful, okay? One more time. Go back to the beginning. Feel like, I mean, I kind of have the issue of looking up as I'm pulling too. Again, packing that head a little more, maybe trying to get a little more quad into it.
Yeah, and I think, like, I do agree with the head. I do agree with trying to get a little bit more knee over the bar potentially, but again, she is pretty there already.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those things where I don't think she maybe necessarily needs more, because again, she's kind of built with Durrell levers,
Sure.
which means that like, she can use a lot of back, and she clearly is. And with her concern of the rounding, I think that like it is a little bit round, but it's mostly T-spine, a little bit of lumbar, but again, I'm not really afraid of lumbar rounding. But I think that my biggest concern is, number one, I'd like to see that chin down a little bit more, because I think that could let her have her arms hang a little bit lower, as we see the Mike Israetel suggested video. Watch me, don't watch Dr. Mike. But the other thing I was thinking too that I asked her about is, since again, I haven't seen a ton of her pulls since she's new here, watching nice stack, nice stack, nice stack. And then from there up, the finish is lumbar extension, not really hip extension. So I was kind of wondering if that is normal for her, and she doesn't think that it is. And knowing that she's coming off of that bit of a back tweak, my suspicion is hip flexors might be a little bit locked down to try to protect that low back. So what I asked her to do for me for the next couple of weeks is to run just some hip extension work, running some, the half nail hip flexor type stretch thing that I love to do. It's in the movement library in here if you guys want to check it out. Maybe I'll put it on screen. Actually, I'll lose the thread. Maybe I'll put it on screen afterwards. But what I'd be thinking is, again, just like seeing if we can get a little bit of length back in the hip flexor and kind of try to get some glute contraction as we're doing it, and then progress that guy into a rear leg intense split squat so we can start loading the hip flexor at end range. And if someone does have this extension finish, getting the hip extension back can let their glutes have more freedom to drive through. And I think that should make her lockout feel stronger versus getting sticky and having to finish out with the lumbar spine. But this is a really freaking strong pull, and I'm very excited to have her in here because I think we can do some cool stuff once we clean a little bit up. And again, like running the low back desensitization stuff I gave her clearly did wonderful here that she's pulling this already. And again, not worried about the rounding. I do think if we had the chin a little bit lower right off the start, we could probably, again, get a bit better brace. It might feel a little bit more tipped forward, but again, I think chin down would actually let her maybe squeak out a tiny bit more knee travel, not screwing up the levers. So really solid pull, and really stoked that the back is coming around. Weston is in here. He hasn't tossed his deadlift up for a while, and he's been tossing a lot of squats up, which are going. He's running some low blocks, experimenting with bringing his stance in a little bit and changing where he's looking visually at the start, because he's someone who's tended to crank his neck back. Next wave, we'll be back to pulling from the floor. Alternatively, if there's better content, here are some follow-up singles on bench, because he posted his bench last week and we basically yelled at him for his bottom end a little bit at his upper back. But he thinks the floor press carried over, so curious to see if his bench stuff did improve. And go watch the other weeks. I think he was on week 1, so you can see what his bench looked like. So we'll see. And I got to click on YouTube again. And again, he's been posting a ton of squats, ton of benches, so I'm not super familiar with his pull. But taking a look at this, what do you think, Ty?
I think, like you said, kind of keeping that chin down neutral packed a little more. I think
Yes.
maybe a little more patient off the floor. I think that rep looked like the hips came up a little bit less. The first couple as he pulled.
Yeah, because he's kind of like pulling himself out of his quads. He's knee over the bar, and then his knees bounce right back, and he kind of turns into a little bit more stiff leg. And part of that might be, like, one of the reasons I love a low block pull is that the low block pull just being like little tiny bit off the floor, it oftentimes ends up being a little bit harder than pulling off the floor because it's harder to create tension when the bar is that little bit further up. And that might be kind of part of why his wedge looks a little bit loose. But I think the other part is that he's just shoving his knees forward, or just like flinging the knees forward. He's not really doing it into tension. So what I'd probably be thinking about in terms of lower body, you can see too, his toes are coming up just a hair. I would be really, really, really emphasizing toe pressure. Like when he's up here in the stiff leg, I'd be thinking about toe pressure, toe pressure, toe pressure, because having that toe pressure will force tension into the anterior chain. It'll force a little bit of tension in the quads. So instead of just like dropping into his knees, I want him to think about having tension in the quads, having that floor pressure, and then trying to pull himself into the knees with the hamstrings. That'll give him a little bit better stretch reflex, a little bit better ability to use quads because we have tension instead of just trying to like find tension from the very beginning. And I think that would clean up the bottom end. And if he's not just like lifting his toes up and coming to his heels, I bet the top end starts to feel a little bit stronger as well. But I think like lats, pretty happy with. Brace, pretty happy with. And again, like the little bit of head pack that Ty was saying, I still think I would want to clean that up a hair. But I think like the toe pressure, especially off the block. And if you guys saw my deadlift vlog the other week, like I pulled deficits 2 weeks ago, which makes it very easy for me to create tension off the floor because I have less space. And then going to a block the week after a deficit, I was riding the freaking struggle bus because I wasn't creating enough tension. So I think that that's going to be the big thing here that I'd want to think about, want to work on. Now, as far as his bench goes, kind of gave a spoiler because I told Ty that he's a little bit loosey-goosey in the bottom last week. And last week he posted reps. This week a bigger single, and then see if he's got some down sets in here, or looks like just another single. But I think the big thing too is, I think I talked to him about this months ago, but I think what might be screwing him a little bit is he's benching out of the mono hooks. And what I want you to see is as he's unracking backwards away from his lats. So if someone is struggling with finding lats on bench, I probably wouldn't want him benching out of mono hooks. And if he is going to bench out of mono hooks, what I'd be urging him to do is really freaking try to pull into it and pull into it and pull into it, so that, you know, ideally from the mono hooks, we have zero translation on the unrack. So, but I think that even just like having a little bit of pull out would help him find more lats. And again, if we got to pull it out of a J hook in a meet, I definitely rather see a J hook unrack than the mono hooks, even though his gym does have the mono hooks. And like, I'm kind of, unless someone's benching equipped alone, I'd way rather see them running a unrack out of J's. And even if he does have a self handoff, like when I was in Florida and I first graduated, I had to start training very early in the morning, and there wasn't really anyone in there to give me a handoff. So I had to learn to self handoff well. And it did suck at first, but it got to the point where like my self handoff felt as strong as anything. Like I was self handing off over 500 pounds on boards with no spotter. Safeties were up, obviously, so I didn't die at 6 in the morning on my own. But I think that if he did really, really, really learn to kind of scoot up under the J's, really try to find lats, pull into the bar super hard, and then just have that tricep pop over, pull in until the bar kind of feels like it's falling into a pocket in his lats, I think that would help him with that bottom end hold up. And like, knowing that this is a really heavy single compared to the reps last week, I think I would say that it's going in the right direction. And the last thing I kind of want to touch on is if we're looking at as he's kind of coming through to the touch, it looks like he is like letting it load into his legs, but it also looks to me like the legs might be a little bit soft on the eccentric compared to the concentric. So I am okay with some of this, everything translating down through the unrack, but I would rather see the legs like, because you can see he's really pushing hard on the concentric. I'd rather see that level of push on the eccentric, and it should help him then have more tension for the concentric. Now, looking at Austin's, bench is his worst lift and lift he hates the most or hates the worst. He's not saying that's okay, but it's the truth and it needs some hard work. He knows it's light, but he doesn't know. He wants to just get his bench up. And he's running some, I gotta click the YouTube. I'm gonna remember once this video. But I think like looking at arm angle on the start position, talked about this before, but I think maybe like half an inch further pull out could let him catch a bit more in the bottom end. And the reason I think that could be benefiting for him is we're looking at the elbows. We can kind of see the elbows want to flick a little bit in. So I think if we had a little bit further pull out, it could lead to a touch point that would let him be a bit more stacked in the bottom. And I think that could help the situation. What do you see in Ty?
That's like this one said pinky on the ring grip. So I was just seeing what that compared to the first set.
And I know he likes to change his grips a lot. So I just say like he's coming up to a meet. I'd probably just say like if this is going to be like comp specific work, I'd probably just try to make it comp specific. And even if he doesn't know which grip is better, which grip is stronger, like this being a little bit narrower, the elbow kick is a little bit more extreme and it's probably fighting him a little bit more. So I'd probably just, stick with this sucker and just roll with it and do the best that we can. You can see this elbow flick's still there, but it's not as much of like a aggressive swing. So I think this, a little bit more lat pull out, I think that would help. And I think on like talking about a lift, like you hating a lift because it's your worst lift, this is so silly, but I felt that way about my deadlift for so long. And I was like, oh, my levers suck for deadlift. I'm not going to be a good deadlifter. I can't pull good. But what actually kind of fixed my deadlift just a little bit is just being like, screw it. I'm going to get excited to deadlift and I'm going to have fun. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to, rip this bar as hard as I freaking can without being an asshole and ripping it because we want to have a solid wedge. But I think like, just like saying that you hate a lift and you suck at it, it's going to make it harder to train well. So just like, even if you know that you suck at a lift right now, be like, I suck at a lift right now, but I'm excited to get it better. And I think like Ty too with your bench.
Yeah.
I've kind of been nagging him a little bit, the last while about being like, yeah, okay, your bench sucks right now, but we're doing shit to make it better. So get freaking excited and dig into that work. And I know with him, like he's working hard on pretty much everything for his bench. So like just get excited that you're working hard, dude, and like dig into the work, embrace it, have fun with it. And I think again, like the only technical thing I want to see is probably a little bit further pull out. And I think that would help us with finding a bit more solid bottom end. You kind of see like on this set, he's trying to get it. He's got to get it a little bit better, but I kind of want to see just like kind of similar to what I was talking about with Weston. Like if you get the bar far enough out, it's going to like feel like it's just like settling into you once you get it far enough out, and it should feel like it just like almost falls into a pocket or a hole or something. And it should let you have a way more confident feeling eccentric. Isaac's posted his squats this week because it's pretty, and realized that he's been 5 kilos off his weight all prep since he's been using the squat bar. So bonus 5 kilos is sick. And I saw this on Instagram already. He ran a pause squat this week because he felt a little bit cooked last week. So he posted a squat last week in the main thread saying he was cooked. And I was like, okay, let's run a strict pause. So I already know looking at this that he held together. Like, this is pretty. And like, Isaac is someone who I constantly bully to eat more food because, you know, he's not much shorter than I am, and he's a 165er, so he definitely could afford to fill out a little bit more. But what he struggled with when he first got in here, he was one of the first guys in, which I'm super stoked to see how much better it's gotten, because I'm pretty sure that this is heavier than what he was squatting non-paused before. And what he would struggle with is he would, you know, hit the hole in a decent position. He was almost like trying to stay too upright. So he was trying to stay a little bit upright, but everything looked collected, but he was staying too upright for his levers. And he'd just like flip his ass back, dump out of his quads, and it would just turn into like a super gross good morning. We kind of started by getting him to embrace a little tiny bit more hinge, and we've got him to do a shit ton of quad work. So last week I was kind of teased him about his bench. So this week I'm just going to say, like, I am so freaking proud of him for how much better his squat has gotten. And he's another guy where he's kind of like Ty. He's got the skinny stuff going on for him and long limbs, long levers. But he's dug into the squat work, and it's been freaking huge to see. So props to Isaac. You see anything wrong here? Like, I'm just mostly happy knowing how it used to look.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the only thing I could say if there was anything is maybe on the walkout, a couple less steps, but that's...
Yeah. And that's something I've already kind of talked to him about. And like, it's one of those things too, where I wouldn't say it might not be as minimal, but I wouldn't say that that's like excessive, because it's not like he's searching for it. He's just used to the 4-stepper. So sure. I'm not necessarily worried about that in his case. And like, again, like if he was just like stomping his feet, finding rotation, I'd be more worried about just kind of learning to be more confident. But I think like that's a fine walkout for me for what we're looking for. Now we're looking at Adrien. He made adjustments since our last week's Form Check Friday. Proud to actually say that he's going to stay working with despite how much it hurts the ego. And basically, oh, got to click the YouTube. So he was kind of wondering about figuring out his low bar squat. He is an Olympic lifter, so he's super used to the high bar. And I think that he's still... The fancy edit's making it harder to figure out Olympics about, like, what am I looking for? What am I looking for? Oh, it's a different angle. And kind of what we yelled at him about last week was to kind of like quit trying to make his low bar super different from a high bar. And kind of what I mean by that is, like, a low bar will have more hinge, will have more hip, but I think a lot of people, if they are someone who has been like a really good high bar squatter, like Joel ran into this issue when we were helping him figure out low bar, is like he hated low bar, but he was kind of like trying to like Mark Ripito hip drive the low bar squat, and it took away what he was good at. So what I kind of like to kind of tell people with their low bars, if they are a good high bar squatter, is to almost aim for the exact same knee position as they would on their high bar, so they're still taking advantage of the strong ass freaking legs that they have. And then with that same knee travel, just let the low bar kind of go where it wants to go balance wise, and it turns into a lot better squat. And it still probably is a little bit more hippie than I'd love. So I think that I still want to try to see a little bit more torso angle, because it looks like he's like trying to keep his chest tall, and I think that's what's causing his ass to shoot back. So like, if we are squatting low bar, like, I think I'm happy with where he's hitting the hole knee wise, but what I want to try to do is just like embrace a little bit lower ribcage position, a little bit more hinge, a little bit, you know, less trying to initiate upright, because you can see on his initiation on the back view, if it goes to the back view, I'll just wait for it to scroll instead of trying to click a random place. But you can see he's like initiating. As he initiates, his hips are traveling backwards at a greater rate than his chest is dropping, which kind of tells me that he's just still trying to stay that little bit too upright. So I think like what I'd want to visualize for him is trying to get the hips and the rib cage to just move as one unit, versus like hip shooting back, rib cage staying high, because if he's moving as one unit, he should be able to load into the bottom better, be more solid, and just make it work better for him. Now scrolling up to Gary's, and Gary's been in here a while, hasn't posted a ton, but gotta click YouTube. But this is his bench. And I remember the big thing that we were yelling at him out for was the bottom end hold up a little bit. Because again, you can see that it's still all the Thai talk. But you see that little bobble?
Yeah.
I said I'd let Thai talk, then interrupt him. What a
that's okay.
What a prick.
Yeah, kind of goes down, touches it. There's that little bounce there, down and then up.
And I think, again, like what I want to be thinking about and visualizing is I'd really, really, really want to try to just think about like pulling chest up to the bar. Because we're watching the chest as he goes to touch. What I ideally want to see is, it's hard to see because the plates are blocking out, so I'm kind of trying to watch the sternum angle up there. If you're an online coach, one of the best skills you could have is learning, if you can't see the body part that you want to look at, learning to look for other body parts to tell you what that body part is doing. But looking at the upper chest, you got to see the upper sternum is getting a little bit flatter, and you got to see like on the press, you can see it get taller again. So that tells me that down here is probably dropping just a hair. So I'd really want to emphasize, like, think about trying to lift that to the bar. And how he's going to lift that to the bar is using his thoracic erectors to pull it up, using his low traps to pull it up, using his lats to pull it up. And I think that pull could clean up the bottom end. And what I've told him to do before is to just run a shit ton of bench intense straight on pull downs. Watch the video I post tomorrow when I was training with Ty, because I saw how he was doing them, because I'd never seen him do them before. And I definitely yelled at him a little bit for those. But it felt way better the way that we're really trying to emphasize that, like, hard catch, pull chest through, hard catch, pull chest through. And I really want to see Gary jamming out on those and making sure those are maybe not pushed hard, but pushed enough that we can have the ability in the field to start lifting chest a bit better on his bench. Now with his squat, I know he's struggling with depth a little bit, so I'm curious if this is getting better. And I definitely think that it is getting better. And he's another guy that's getting programming from someone else. I know they're doing a lot of lower rep work, trying to do a little bit of linear. And I think like what I've talked about before is, and the biggest thing that I want to see is before they get up to their working weights, is I want to make sure that he is trying to get like the bar warm up lower, his first warm up lower, second warm up lower, his third warm up lower, and just see if we can carry that better on the top sets. And this is one of those ones where I know he does have a meet coming up, so I would definitely like to see it a bit deeper. But it is getting better. It looks like he's fighting himself less, so I'd say it is coming around. But I still know that where he's competing, I'm going to want it a little bit lower. But the other thing I want to credit him on is that his torso position is not crumbling really at all here. So I think that's going to let him have more confidence to sink it in a little bit more. And I think kind of the last thing too is, again, I kind of, this is one of the most important things in my opinion for having a solid squat is just trying to get a little bit more extension to that upper T-spine and pulling that head back a little bit more. And I think that that would actually help with balance in this case. Because again, it's going to help with brace, but I think the biggest thing is like, if that head is a little bit more back, it's going to help him have a little bit better balance so he doesn't feel like he's running out of as much room getting to the bottom. So I think the big thing here is just keep trying to dunker on the warm-ups, keep working on flexibility, and get a little bit better head pack. And that should lead to a little bit better bottom end feel and a little bit more confidence pushing in. Need to make a drinking game out of every time I say little this vlog, because Miad isn't here saying perfect every single time. But I guess that is all the videos that we had submitted. I capped her just so we weren't sitting here for an hour. So if you guys need help, need coaching from me, don't know what to do with your training, struggling with programming, struggling with technique, struggling with knowing what accessories to do for your needs, hit the link below, join the team. We will make you a better lifter, just like we're trying to do with Ty. Ty's getting better. He's figured his shit out.
Yeah, you know, this was a little embarrassing, but you know, that's what I'm in the team for.
And I think like the biggest thing too that's going to help him making him do this is I didn't just want to bully him. The biggest thing is like, I think the most value of the team is it can get you looking at how I coach other lifters. And that's going to kind of help you understand like what we're looking for, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to figure out with certain people. And if you can like kind of see like, oh, that will work for that, or that is working for that, you can keep that in your back pocket. So if you're working with a client or if you have something pop up in the future, you can kind of take that and then apply it better to yourself versus needing to come back and be like, Seth, what do I do? My goal isn't really to be like the dictator and say that this is what you have to do. I want to help teach people to think for themselves and learn for themselves and just figure things out on their own, because I think that the best way to get coaching as a powerlifter is to get help from others, but learn how to make decisions for yourself, learn how to think for yourself, and that is the real goal here. So thank you guys so much. Peace out. Have a good night. That wasn't too painful, eh?
No.
And now we got to do the tradition of getting the stupid thumbnail shot.
Yeah. I mean, it was painful for me. That was embarrassing. Started off okay with Manan. I'm like, nice, this might not be too bad. And then it was just, it's good though, because, I'm just looking for all this obvious stuff. And then, you notice all these little things.